Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, salam UMS Eco Campus, salam Sabah Maju Jaya dan salam keluarga Malaysia. Terlebih dahulu saya mengucapkan berbanyak-banyak terima kasih kepada bahagian sumber manusia khususnya unit latihan kerana memberi peluang kepada saya dan rakan saya Profesor Madya Dr. Fatimah Ahmedi untuk mengendalikan satu siri kursus yang mana untuk makluman semua rakan-rakan, saya mohon maaf, saya panggil semua rakan-rakan ya, untuk makluman semua rakan-rakan, kursus yang sesi yang kami akan kongsikan ini bersama-sama dengan Profesor Madya Dr. Fatimah ini adalah lanjutan kepada satu program AKEP ya, Akademi Kepimpinan Pengajian Tinggi Nasional AKEP, yang mana di AKEP telah menganugerahkan satu projek kepada Profesor Madya Dr. Fatimah selaku ketua dan saya selaku timbalannya untuk menyediakan satu modul kepimpinan ya. Modul kepimpinan ini yang mana quorumnya atau penyertaannya adalah terdiri daripada para pensyarah, wakil-wakil pensyarah daripada 20 universiti awam di Malaysia. So modul ini yang dibina oleh Profesor Madya Dr. Fatimah dan saya telah pun kami bukukan dan buku itu pun sedang dijual di penerbit UMS lah untuk makluman ya. Dan tujuan kami membawa program ini ke UMS agar para pensyarah, rakan-rakan pensyarah di UMS juga mengetahui kaedah-kaedah tertentu dalam kita melaksanakan program, khususnya program kemasyarakatan, sama ada pemindahan ilmu ataupun CSR ya. Saya Dr. Jakaria Dasan, orang panggil saya Dr. Jack ya, Dr. Jack. Saya merupakan pengarah Pusat Kelestarian Libat Sama Masyarakat. Saya mohon maaf sebab saya tak dapat buka video. Something wrong with my laptop. Kalau saya buka video dia lagged ya. Saya rasa itu sedikit pengenalan mengenai program yang kita akan adakan pada hari ini. Seterusnya saya persilakan sahabat baik saya Profesor Madya Dr. Fatimah Ahmedi untuk meneruskan sesi berikutnya. Dipersilakan Doktor.
Hello, Assalamualaikum. Selamat sejahtera. Salam UMS Eco Campus. Salam keluarga Malaysia. Okey, saya harap saya dapat semua salutation tu betul lah. Salam-salam tu Dr. Jack. Okey, pagi ni terima kasih banyak kepada Dr. Jack di atas permulaan bicara untuk kita mulakan kursus kepada BSM pada pagi ni. So dengan lafaz bismillah, let me just start off my talk for this morning. So I will just go through what we call the Shamrol for Leaders. This is the framework yang kami gunakan for this program. So that program, nama dia Sustainable Development Goals Leadership Program, University for Society. That was last year punya nama lah. But I believe Dr. Jack, he is the current director of our CSSE, Pusat Kelestarian Libat Sama Masyarakat. So if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Jack did mention to me that this U4S has now been branded into a different name called Unity, but he will talk about it later on. Jadi buat masa sekarang ni, saya just maintain dulu this particular name in which later on Dr. Jack akan perkenalkan this Unity concept. Okay, just to inform everyone, kita ada buku dah from this particular program yang kita develop. Kita dah ada this buku, as Dr. Jack mentioned, kita boleh belilah daripada penerbit UMS if you ever interested to buy one. Okay, so this particular book memang kita guna sebagai guidance for this particular program. So I just would like to introduce dahulu about this whole concept of what we said about the Shamrol for Leaders. So saya akan cover these four main things. What is exactly is SDG leadership itself. Number 2 is we want to talk about the share model framework. Number 3, within that share model framework ni kita ada satu particular task that we need to know, some sort of exercise program lah. When I say exercise, not physical exercise, it's exercise, doing some activities. So action-based 6-step plan. And last but not least, how do we exactly assess the leadership? Because when we talk about everyone, when you hear about SDG, everyone think about, okay, we go to community, we do stuff, and that's about it. But apa yang kita nak tekankan, emphasize dalam kita punya share model for leaders ni is that of course we have that community engagement going on. We have that task together within communities and all the stakeholders including academia, but at the same time we want to embed, kita nak terapkan, sematkan elemen kepimpinan. This is what is important when it comes to CAP itself. So di sinilah kita mainkan peranan dalam konsep share model tersebut. Okay, so memandangkan di share model ni kita crafted sort of in line with the spirit of SDG, so it's good for me to sort of mentioning a little bit in terms of what exactly is SDG leadership itself. Okay, so I think everyone sort of well versed now know that what sustainable development goals memang is the whole global framework that we use to actually drive us in terms of how we want to improve the socioeconomy, the well-being of our own nation, kan? Okay, so of course we have sustainable development goals ni is started back in 2015 in the United Nations itself. Because before that, prior to that SDG, we have what we call MDG, Millennium Development Goals. And once we hit that 2000, so we know that at 2015, we need to have a separate goals to actually go further and improve the global outcomes itself. So here, I think everyone already heard about these 5 P's, okay? People, prosperity, peace, partnership, and planet. But maybe some of you might not quite well versed in the sense that when it comes to the 17 goals, we have 17, from no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, all the way until, last but not least, the number 17, partnerships for the goals. So if you can see, in each of the 17 goals, they have a separate target. So this target is basically to look into the major problems, areas that they really want to target. And every single target, they have a specific indicators. And these indicators are very important, sangat penting, sebab whenever you want to do some project, community engagement, whether you want to go ahead into maybe just a specific SDG, for example, you want, for me myself, health, for example, maybe I just would like to go for SDG 3 and SDG 4. So in this SDG 3 dan 4 ni, kita ada specific indicators. So when you want to monitor the impact outcome of your own project that you're going to deliver, it will be good kita put this kind of indicators to be part of the way how we want to measure the impact that we're going, hopefully we can deliver to the society ataupun community yang kita engage. At the same time, the good thing about this SDGs, the theme is that to transform the world, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. So everyone would realize that this SDGs started way back in 2015, is to actually to have for the next 50 years, 15 tahun to reach the 2030 agenda. And that 2030 agenda is based on these 3 universal values. So of course, the first one, human rights-based approach. So to make sure that you have access, equal access to every single population on earth, okay? And everyone has the same right. Now, 2 additional things that I love about this particular 2030, being a woman myself and being a rehab specialist, is that number 1, leave no one behind. So basically, they put here is should be inclusiveness to everyone, including disabled population. So we're talking about those who live having disabilities, for example, stroke or maybe brain injury or even spinal cord injury. So the good thing about this particular 2030 agenda is that we want to make sure that whenever we come up with some planning, regardless of whatever courses that we want to go for. So we want to make sure that we include those vulnerable population, okay? And the third one is gender equality and women empowerment. This I hold very dearly to my heart because, of course, me myself being a woman, and we want to make sure that, of course, we realize if we talk about 30 years ago, you are not going to see a lot of women, especially in a high ranking job, okay? And even as basic as a kerja di bahagian production itself, contoh kerja di warehouse atau even kilang, right? So that kind of situation is that you see a lot of areas where female have difficult access for that. So with this particular SDGs, what you can see is there is a specific SDG called the goal goal number 10, reduce inequalities. So, and gender equality, number 5. So this too is actually for, good thing is to cover for female as well, for us women. So we want to make sure that for us women, we also have the equal access for this, whatever opportunities are out there. Now, at the same time, how we are in Malaysia. So under Unit Perancang Ekonomi, Economic Planning Unit, directly under Jabatan Perdana Menteri, so they have this specific National SDG Council. So initially it was started way back during the RMK 11, where they have already done some mapping, how they want to map those 17 SDGs into our own particular interests. Okay, so what they do is they map it into a 5 different criteria, which is inclusivity, well-being, human capital, environment, natural resources, and last but not least is economic growth. So of course, looking at this, they map it to make sure that within this National SDG Council, they have the specific steering committee to actually go ahead and move forward, ensure that the planning that we are doing for the nation is to cover all aspects of the SDGs as well. And I hope everyone will understand this particular nice rounded picture. Kita ada wawasan kemakmuran bersama 2030, in which we have 7 main thrust, 7 thrust, di mana kita nak pacukan negara kita ni to make sure that as we reach 2030, which is in line with the SDGs agenda, that kita capai ke 7 thrust tersebut. Okay. Now, we have this under national, all this pemacu dasar under either it's global or even our own nation itself. So how can we as academicians, kita sebagai pensyarah akademia boleh membantu dalam memacukan negara based on this SDG spirit. So kalau kita tengok di sini ada pelbagai platform, a lot of places that we can actually engage in terms of how academicians can actually support. We're talking even within the university setting, within the local setting, or even at the international platform. So if you can see here, for example, in Universiti Malaya, they even have the Sustainable Development Solutions Network. Is some sort of subdivision under their own community engagement center. So they have particular this development that they go ahead to actually do a lot of projects. And we talk about UCTC, this is quite generic thing. So every single university, especially when we talk about public universities, Universiti Awam, kita ada this particular pusat transformasi community university. So di UMS sendiri, Dr. Jack adalah sebagai director, kita panggil sebagai CSSE, Center for Sustainable Society Engagement, atau dalam bahasa Melayu, Pusat Kelestarian Libat Sama Masyarakat. Even when you look into private universities, they're very how shall I say, very aggressive towards this, achieving this SDG goals. So even they have a very good talk, for example, USSI and Utah, just to talk about SDGs itself. Now, as we move into a more international platform, so APUCHEN is something that one of our RU in Malaysia, which is University of Science Malaysia, USM, they're very actively engaged. So they're involved in this APUCHEN, Asia Pacific University Community and Engagement Network. So what they do is they have multi-universities, international collaborations, where they do community engagement, they sort of matching grant together, and they develop certain communities for that particular purposes. And of course, it's in line with the national dasar dan juga SDGs itself. And another thing that I would like to highlight is what we call WACD, the World Universities Association for Community Development. This is also another platform di persadaran antarabangsa, where I believe UMS has just recently got into that as well, registered, and Dr. Jakaria, he is the anchor for that, for our university. So these are the areas that, just some of it, not exhaustive, just some of it where we can actually support how we can actually promote our own society, our own people to actually getting better in terms of socio-economic development, well-being, etc. That we can support SDGs. Okay, now when we talk about SDGs as well, since kita akademia ni, we always talk about ranking, sikit-sikit nak ranking. So all this time kita go for this QS ranking, betul lah. So Alhamdulillah Universiti Malaysia Sabah, I think since for the past couple of years kot, kita dah masuk into ranking. That's the first kick off, which is good. Although ranking masih lagi 1000, but tak apa. So we are into ranking. Now when we talk about ranking, we have two separate ranking. One is US, another one is THE ranking. So Times Higher Education World University ranking. So the good thing about this THE ranking is that they have a specific ranking just to look into United Nations SDGs. So based on 2019, you can see that USM lead the whole thing, because USM, they are, to be honest, the best RU in terms of the SDGs. They're very good. That hence the reason they are into this aperture network just now that I mentioned. Even UTM, they also between 100 to 200. And I would like to highlight that even private university Utah is also into this ranking. Now, when 2 years later, during the COVID-19 pandemic era, so USM has increased from 49 now to 39. So this is a very high achievement for USM, because this is very good ranking for SDGs related factor for this THE. Even Utah, although they has reduced in terms of ranking, but they're still within that top 300. Okay, so with these SDGs going on, we know that it is important that us academicians, we have to play active role for this. Kita kena aktif untuk buat sesuatu based on SDG as well. Sebab kita sebagai part of the government servants, we need to help and support government's initiative. Now, bila kita campurkan elemen kepimpinan SDG leadership di sini, CAP themselves, dia dah start off tau initiative to make sure that kita academicians understand the concept of SDG leadership. So, to be honest, I'm very proud to say that the first SDG leadership was started even by us, UMS. And then, as the years go by, of course, they keep changing. They want to have a separate strategic partners, go from one university to another university. So, in general, a lot of these universities, including us, we implement and highlight the ESD. So when we talk about ESD, Education for Sustainable Development. So this is under UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, in which one of the SDGs itself, SDG 4, okay, when we talk about quality education. So here they wanted to highlight further and zoom in into what we call Education for Sustainable Development. And I'm sure all of you quite well versed on this. So this ESD, what they want is that they want to empower the students, the learners that come to our universities, okay, regardless of ages, must be equipped with the knowledge, skills, values and attitudes as well, to make sure that bila kita cuba selesaikan masalah-masalah yang berlaku, baik dalam konteks kontekstual ataupun even global, terutamanya kalau kita bercakap dari segi masalah persekitaran, perubahan climate, okay, biodiversity. Sabah ni kan memang sangat terkenal dengan biodiversity, dan kita juga ada masalah poverty, ramai komuniti luar bandar. So these are things yang kita kena hit, targeted dalam ESD. So apa yang kita nak dalam ESD ni is some sort of transformative education, so that pelajar-pelajar kita, our own graduates, when they come up, able to come up with a proper planning, decision making and actions untuk merubahkan society atau komuniti masing-masing, supaya kita boleh jaga the whole planet as together. Now, even General Assembly, dalam United Nations General Assembly 2017 mentioned that this ESD ni become the main element dalam SDG 4, Quality Education. So dia adalah because of this SDG 4 ni itself, walaupun dia nombor 4, dia lah becoming the key untuk enable every single other SDGs dalam 17 tersebut. Okay, so with this Education for Sustainable Development, di sini dan datangnya kita punya our own government di bawah Pendidikan Tinggi, Pembangunan Pendidikan Malaysia, di mana terletaknya program SULAM. Okay, so I'm sure kita semua sort of dah dengar perkataan SULAM, faham? So SULAM ni is part of the initiative daripada government kita, KPT, to actually implement in terms of ESD itself. Kita make sure kita highlightkan experiential learning di kalangan pelajar-pelajar kita, our own graduate, tak kisahlah undergrad or postgraduate, to make sure that they are well versed in terms of how to tackle the challenge when they go out of the university. At the same time, dalam Pembangunan Pendidikan Malaysia ni, this SULAM itself, kita highlight juga the importance of even a small element of entrepreneurship. Keusahawanan tu sangat penting because of the entrepreneurship itself, kita boleh memacukan our own society, community to make sure that kita dapat menaikkan lagi lah sosioekonomi penduduk tempatan. There is one good book from University Science Malaysia, University Putra Malaysia, Industry Community Engagement. This is also another university framework actually for them how they can engage university, community dan industry. Okay, and they have revamped about 3 years ago to redesign balik the whole higher education platform when it comes to this university, industry and community engagement. So there is this particular book memang ada. And I believe in every UCTC should have this particular book. Okay, so 2020 during that pandemic itself, before that is I think 2019, they have started this concept called Municipal Society to actually capture this and to capture how we can revamp the whole sort of collaborative partnership between academia, community, society, and also industry. So because of all this, we take all this into concept and come up this particular share model framework untuk kita implement this particular SDG leadership untuk kita bawa ke dalam ACAP. Okay, so basically that's the whole SDG leadership, the gist of it. Now, let me just kongsi sikit apa yang kami buat dalam share model tersebut dan apakah yang elemen yang kami terapkan. Okay. Kita ada 3 main objektif bila kita cakap tentang share model tersebut. Yang pertama, kita nak masukkan elemen shared leadership, kepimpinan bersama. So, I think those especially in arts atau social sciences, especially dalam bidang leadership yang mana you all memang dalam human resources ataupun bahagian management, I'm sure you all know there's quite various types or attributes of leadership itself. Ada pelbagai jenis. But what we would like to highlight dalam this particular share model for leaders, kita nak inculcate, terapkan elemen shared leadership ni di mana all the stakeholders termasuk academicians, when we talk about leading a particular project, kita nak tekankan kepimpinan bersama, shared leadership. Namun, of course, we have to consider as well, since the project is coming from us, the academician, we must implement the element within that shared leadership untuk kita become the main leaders for the whole project. Next, kita ada particular action-based solutions, the step itself that we use untuk this particular share model for leaders. And last but not least, kita highlightkan kepentingan untuk menerapkan relationship building between all the stakeholders untuk kita make sure that whatever projects that we bring in, it will be sustainable so that the impact yang kita nak tengok ni, it's not just output from us academician. I know that kita ni bermain dengan output juga. Ialah kita pun ada KPI, LMPT nak capai. So kita fikir publication, kita fikir grant. But when we talk about community engagement, when we go beyond university to realize our third mission of the university, kita kena make sure kita capai the impact to the society. Not just dari segi publication, not just dari segi grant. Okay, so share model ni kita ada 3 elemen. So SH itself mean shared leadership. Okay, A is action based and RE is relationship building. So hence the reason that particular acronym came about. So shared leadership, as I mentioned, there are few attributes that we know about leadership. But for this particular shared leadership, kita ada 3 main attributes atau virtues atau values yang kita nak highlightkan. So these 3 elements yang kita nak tekankan dalam shared leadership, number 1, kita go through into what we call transactional leadership. So dalam transactional leadership ni kita tengok kepada effort reward relationship. Kita make sure that our team, when they do the work, when they have produced output, we want them to feel that there is rewards with that. So of course, rewards will look into the impact to the society, the output that the academician receive, and not just looking into academic perspective, but also to other stakeholders. Contoh kalau kita buat collaboration with industry. So industry, of course, we want to make sure that they also have something to gain from that particular engagement. Next, this is a very good one, transformational leadership. So dalam shared leadership ni, kita nak highlight all those key players inside this partnership. We must make sure that all of them have shared similar vision, mission, must have communication between each other, how they want to achieve the goals. Macam mana kita nak dapatkan impact tersebut pada society yang kita target. Dan of course transformation leadership ni kita tekankan high performance expectation, meaning kita bukan just buat orang kata okay lah kita buat je, try, dapat tak apa. We don't want that kind of sort of leadership attribute. Kita nak we would able to see where we are in the next 5 years down the line, apa kejayaan kita nak capai for that particular project. So this is what we call high performance expectations. And the last thing that kita nak tekankan dalam shared leadership is what we call empowering leadership. So we know that in order to produce a good impact to society, collaborative partnership ni perlu ramai orang. It cannot just one, it's not a single, how do we say it? It's not a single man show. It's a single person show. So basically it has to be multiple team members. So these multiple team members, we want them to be empowered so that they can also lead the project. So kita nak make sure they can become good when it comes to coming into thinking, come up with the teamwork planning. They need to be able to develop themselves and must be together, participate dalam make sure kita capai apa yang kita nak at the end of the project. So macam mana kita cuba terapkan elemen shared leadership ni? So macam saya mention, kita program ni sebenarnya kita buat dengan akib ni 5 hari, 4 malam. So of course we have a lot of several things going on in between. So these are the 3 things that kita cuba terapkan shared leadership. So pertama kita buat knowledge sharing. So this sharing session ni kita panggil best SDG leadership practices. Kita panggil semua otai-otai yang memang buat this SDG based project. So we call them as SDG practitioners lah. So we call very senior people, contoh daripada Universiti Putra ada, daripada Universiti UM ada, we call even from USM. So they are the person that involved in knowledge transfer program. We also call from the government organisation. So even contoh Sabah, kita panggil CEO of the Sabah Tourism Board itself. Okay, kita panggil juga daripada industri so that they can give sharing session about how they implement any project related to SDG towards improving the community. Now, with this sharing session, kita buat juga sesi what we call small group discussion. Di mana dalam training tersebut kita pecahkan these people into small groups. Okay, kita selalu letak dalam satu group tu dalam 7-8 orang. So we give this particular portfolio. Kita ada guidance juga, portfolio that we put inside. So they need to go through the whole action-based planning tu, di mana saya akan explain a little bit later on. So they have to brainstorm together and each of them must take lead in terms of how to lead the discussion, how to come up with the project. And last but not least, kita ada what we call evaluation part of it. This evaluation of course is some sort of informal, it's not a formal evaluation pun. It's considered like informal evaluation to become macam kita panggil feedback lah. Kita sendiri akan sort of assess ourselves dan kita assess other people. The reason so kita nak assess 2 things. Number 1 is the leadership itself. Number 2 is team effectiveness. Okay, now that's the first one is shared leadership. Second is action basic step plan. Kita ada 6 step. Kita panggil step 1 address, step 2 prioritize, step 3 matching, step 4 formulate, step 5 execute and step 6 measure. So kalau saya buka later on I akan explain about this action basic step plan. Okay, but basically these are the group task exercise that they have to do brainstorming, discuss bersama-sama dalam small group discussion. And last but not least, kita tekankan elemen relationship building. Saya rasa everyone sort of have heard about what we call this quadruple helix concept. So quadruple helix concept ni kita ada 4 major players di mana kita nak tekankan kalau kita nampak sesuatu pembangunan, sesuatu project together, especially dalam pembangunan community atau society, masyarakat, kita ada 4 major players. So of course kita ada diri kita sendiri as academia, kita ada community yang kita target, kita ada industry player dan kita ada government agency. Namun later on, as we can see for the past few years, we have another what we call pentahelix collaborative network model. So pentahelix collaborative network model ni, we still have those 4 key players coming in, but we have additional one because we know that kita nampak kan kepentingan media, kepentingan coverage untuk orang nampak what we are doing, not because kita nak glamour, tidak, but with this media punya help ni, okay, philanthropist, aktivis ni, it can help to sort of spread the words around so that more more exposure, more assistance can be given bila kita nak buat satu projek. So this is what we call Pentahelix Collaborative Network Model. This is innovative approach dalam kita membentuk satu partnership, relationship building ni untuk kita terapkan supaya kita boleh bangunkan komuniti itu dengan jayanya. Sometimes kalau kita tengok maybe 10 or 15 years ago, without the use of media, philanthropists or even activists ni, sometimes maybe you akan perasan the project that you cuba nak jalankan tu, of course ada impact, tapi mungkin impact dia kecil sebab orang tak nampak. It just within that confined community. Tapi bila kita ada this kind of media coverage, people see more, so lagi banyak coverage dan orang lagi ramai nak membantu. Ini yang pentingnya this fifth element untuk to have this strong relationship building. Okay, now let us move on to the third agenda, which is action-based six-step plan, the one that I mentioned just now. Kita ada 6 langkah tersebut. Dalam kita cuba drafted this particular action-based six-step plan ni, kita masukkan elemen sebab ini sangat penting dalam konsep Nursing for Society. Knowledge transfer program ni sangat penting. Di mana sebenarnya konsep knowledge transfer program ni kita dah perkenalkan quite a while back dah, daripada 2011 lagi. KPT memperkenalkan National KTP Knowledge Transfer Program ni khas untuk universiti awam asalnya, dan dia adalah directly under Economic Planning Unit. So what happened is that dia ada several major roles played by us academia, di mana kita sendiri akan mengeluarkan sesuatu program, knowledge transfer program itu sendiri, apa yang kita nak sampaikan baik dari segi produk, baik dari segi skill yang kita nak sampaikan kepada komuniti. Pada masa yang sama, kita kena ada industri community, komuniti yang kita target untuk kita bantu, dan of course siapa industry player yang kita nak bekerjasama dengan kita. Okay. And then last but not least, graduate intern. Graduate intern ni basically kita nak minta, it should be someone yang kita ambil sebagai kita punya postgraduate, okay, but at the same time this graduate ni will be the first person yang akan cuba implement knowledge transfer program ni, of course under our guidance. So this is what we call strategic knowledge transfer program. So based on this konsep ni, kami masukkan dalam SDG Community Portfolio, di mana dalam ni adanya action based six step plan. So SDG Community Portfolio ni kita dah terapkan di dalam satu komuniti tertentu yang kita pilih di bawah pengawasan, di bawah supervision Pusat Pelestarian Paksa Masyarakat, Dr. Jack punya projek, di mana kita guna Kampung Marakau di Ranau sebagai komuniti tertumpu atau fokus komuniti khas untuk kita laksanakan share model framework ni, yang di mana AKIP menjadi kita punya inilah collaborator. So just to highlight what exactly setiap langkah tersebut. Kalau kita tengok step yang pertama address ni, lebih kepada kita nak tahu apakah masalah komuniti tersebut. So dekat sini penting bila kita cuba fahamkan konsep daripada konsep share model ni, kita kena fahamkan daripada komuniti tersebut apakah masalah orang. Because sometimes, contoh this is what happen usually with us. Kita asyik keluarkan some innovative product ke, innovative approach ke, skill ke, kita nak bawa pada komuniti. But mungkin kita rasa komuniti ni perlu. But when you ask the community, they might not want it. They might want something else. So sangat penting untuk kita tanya betul-betul, dapatkan kepemahaman daripada community, what do they really want. Itu pentingnya contextual needs. Sebab by right, this particular approach ni, it should be two ways. Bottom up approach dan juga top down approach. So top down from us, academia, kita bawa sesuatu yang kita boleh bawa kepada mereka. But at the same time, we need to know from them, their side, the problem, so that will be a bottom-up approach. So it should be two ways. Next, prioritize. Since program ni adalah SDG leadership dan kita kena sort of tekankan elemen SDG itself, kita nak when it comes to prioritize ni, we know which particular SDG kita nak target. Of course lah, kalau fikir balik, kalau boleh kita nak target semua 17. But it will be impossible to target all. And of course, setiap community is unique. Lain komuniti, lain benda yang dia nak kejar. Mungkin ada certain komuniti masalah air, ada certain komuniti dia masalah tourism, macam dia nak naikkan lagi tourism spot dia, macam contoh Kampung Marakau. So, we have to target and prioritize which SDGs kita nak cuba hit. The third one is matching. Match ni sangat important because as I mentioned dalam framework relationship building ni, kita ada key players for us, academia, community, industry dan juga government organisation. So kita kena make sure kita match the right expertise, the right stakeholders. Sebab sometimes, I'm sure some of us also experience this, whenever kita cuba implement projek yang berasaskan community ataupun society, problem is that if we do not have the right stakeholders involved daripada awal, the moment you cuba nak run through the project, the moment you cuba nak dapatkan impact, nak dapat buy-in, it might be difficult. Sebab tu from the beginning, you must start off with a good discussion with the right stakeholders so that you can get the buy-in. Okay. Number 4 is formulate. Formulate ni, this is what is important yang saya sebutkan, the knowledge transfer program. So dalam formulate punya start ni is where you need to come up with the right strategies. Apakah knowledge transfer program yang you nak cuba implement kepada community. Sebab community ni, they sometimes they know better than us. I'm sure a lot of time they know better than us. Just that they might have lacking in terms of skill, lacking of in terms of HR or how to properly manage certain things. So these are the skills, kemahiran, produk yang kita boleh cuba pindahkan pemindahan ilmu kepada mereka. Step 5 ni execute. Dari segi execution ni, of course kita nak tengok apakah expected hurdles, challenges, barriers dalam kita nak cuba laksanakan implement knowledge transfer program. At the same time, bila kita execute, kita mesti ada timeline. Macam kita main gancak lah kan, kalau kita buat research proposal, so gancak. So kita kena make sure we try to execute based on the milestone. And last but not least, this is actually the most important step, is to measure the impact. Problem is that a lot of community-based project ni, bila kita, kalau contoh kita review proposal semua orang, problemnya you akan letak dari segi output sahaja. Contoh berapa papers, macam saya mention lah kan, contoh berapa PhD student akan produce. But what we want is beyond that, sebab kita kena tengok when we want to measure impact tersebut. So sometimes a lot of academicians sometimes mungkin masih lagi tak well versed, tak tahu macam mana nak measure impact. Sebab society kan besar. True, hence the reason kita berbalik kepada few things that can become your basic in terms of how to measure impact. Contoh, SDG itself kita ada targets dan indicators kan. That indicator tu kita boleh gunakan sebagai ways untuk measure the impact pada society bila you jalankan project. So these are the main 6 steps secara kasarnya apa yang kita nak dalam setiap langkah tersebut lah. Okay, so just nak highlight untuk program kuat pertama yang kami dah jalankan pertengahan tahun ni. So kami gunakan Kampung Merakau sebagai komuniti tertumpu dan juga Living Lab. Saya rasa baru ni Prof. Salam dia tekankan konsep Living Laboratory kan. Inilah konsep dia, Living Laboratory. So kita dah gunakan sebenarnya Kampung Merakau Rana ni sebagai Living Laboratory untuk program Syed Model for Leaders ni di bawah pengawasan Dr. Jack. Nanti Dr. Jack akan ceritakan the whole process dan insyaAllah beliau akan tunjukkan apakah kejayaan yang telah PKLM laksanakan untuk Kampung Merakau tersebut. Okay, so this is the last thing dalam my talk. Saya nak bercakap dari segi penilaian kepimpinan, leadership assessment. Sebab kalau ikutkan setiap kali kita jalankan projek, program, kita mesti ada some sort of penilaian. So, we are talking about assessment of leadership. Since ACAP yang merupakan satu akademi untuk melihat dari segi sudut penilaian kepimpinan. So dalam kami cuba crafted this particular leadership portfolio. Sebab tadi kita ada community portfolio untuk action basic step plan. So kita ada juga leadership portfolio untuk kita nilai asas kepimpinan yang ada, terutama dalam kita tekankan konsep shared leadership. So kita buatkan supaya dia inline dengan ACAP generic leadership competency model. So kalau mungkin some of you already know this, sebab some of you mungkin dah bawah unit bakat, ACAP dah panggil. So memang you all tahu ada what we call this leadership competency model. So dalam ACAP punya leadership competency model ni ada 5 area utama. Okay, dia tengok into your own personal effectiveness, the way you think, cognition. 3 is the leadership itself. Okay, number 4, impact influence, how you can influence others, especially when you lead. And last but not least, achievement and action. So based on these 5 things, we come up this particular SDG leadership portfolio based on a paper from one of the senior management academician in US. So this particular questionnaire is a modified version, or we call leadership and team effectiveness questionnaire. So this questionnaire ni, kita basically ada 2 main element. One is leadership behavior, second is team effectiveness. Because this particular leadership, LETAC questionnaire ni, LETAC ni is basically khas untuk kami assess in terms of shared leadership. So kalau tengok dekat dalam nanti question ni, just to highlight you all no need, mungkin tak perlu lah kot nak tengok in detail, tapi what we highlight in this leadership behavior, kita tekankan those important element dalam leadership, shared leadership, which is transactional, transformational dan juga empowering leadership. Then at the same time, once we have this leadership, we want to see how good the team has actually been working together, teamwork, to look at the effectiveness itself. So this particular questionnaire, masa kita run this program, we ask them to rate themselves, their own self, as how they have lead, how they have perceived about their own team. At the same time, kita minta juga the other team members to also rate each other, because we want to see whether there is any significant discrepancy or not. Okay, so just like to show based on the first cohort analysis from the Seletag. So we had 37 participants during the first cohort, and alhamdulillah we received quite significant numbers of it, 30 respondents. So when we do analysis, bivariate analysis between these two things, leadership, because what we believe based on this questionnaire is that when you have shared leadership behavior content is higher, you would see a better team effectiveness. So you can see that there is a positive relationship between the leadership behavior as well as the team effectiveness. So that's about it, basically, about share model for leaders, what we have sort of put as the main pillar for our SDG leadership program under ICAP signature program. So I hope everyone sort of can try to see how what exactly is what we're trying to put inside this particular program. So with that, thank you so much.